in a forgotten corner of the world where the sun rose slowly as if even it was tired, a girl named Kayima learned very early that life did not wait for children to grow strong before testing. She was born into poverty so deep it felt permanent, into a house where love had once existed but had slowly faded into silence. Her first memories were not toys or laughter, but hunger, cold floors, and the sound of her mother coughing through the night. Mama Zuri's cough was deep and painful, the kind that sounded like it came from the soul rather than the chest. Each time Kayima feared it, fear tightened around her small heart because she knew sickness lived in that sound. Every morning, before the sun touched the broken clay walls of their hut, Kayima would wake and sit beside her mother, counting her breaths quietly. Mama Zuri always smiled at her, even when smiling clearly hurt. That smile was Kayima's only shelter. It told her that, despite everything, she was loved by at least one person in the world. Outside that hut was another kind of home. A larger house, stronger walls, colder hearts. Her father, Darius, had not always been cruel. There was a time, long before Kayima could remember, when he had been gentle. But life had hardened him. Regret lived in his eyes and anger walked beside him everywhere. Kayima reminded him of a past he wanted to forget, and so he treated her like a mistake that refused to disappear. Her stepmother, Sarah, carried jealousy like it was part of her blood. She never needed to shout. Her cruelty lived in sharp words, in withholding food, in pretending Kayima did not exist unless there was work to be done. To her, Kayima was not a child. She was competition for sympathy, for space, for attention. And then there was Larissa. Larissa was beautiful in the way the world celebrates. She laughed easily, dressed well, and knew she was admired. From childhood, she learned that power meant standing above someone else. Kayima became that someone. Larissa's joy often came from watching Kayima fail, cry, or shrink into silence. Days passed like slow punishments. Kayima woke before everyone else to sweep the yard, wash clothes by hand, scrub floors until her fingers cracked, and cook meals she was rarely allowed to eat. Sometimes she worked in nearby homes too, cleaning, fetching water, carrying loads heavier than her thin body should bear. The little money she earned never reached her hands. It disappeared into the house. Her stomach learned to ignore hunger. Her voice learned silence. If she spoke, she was punished. If she stayed quiet, she was insulted. Sometimes her father watched. Most times he looked away. That absence hurt more than anger ever could. At night, Kayima returned to the hut she shared with Mama Zuri, curling beside her on the thin mat. Mama Zuri's body grew weaker, but her love never did. She would pull Kayima close, her hands trembling as if trying to memorize her child's shape, as if afraid memory might be all she had left. She whispered one night,
"My daughter,"
her voice thin as breath itself.
"This world will try to harden you."
Kayima listened, tears slipping silently down her face.
"Do not let it.
Mama Zuri continued.
Pain will knock on your heart every day. Do not invite it to stay. When I am gone, they will not protect you. So promise me you will protect your heart. Promise me you will live."
Kayima nodded, unable to speak. She did not understand how a world could exist without her mother in it, but fear had already begun to live inside her. That night, death came quietly. Mama Zuri's breathing slowed, then stopped, like a candle finally surrendering to the wind. Kayima screamed until her voice broke. She ran into the rain, barefoot, knocking on doors, begging strangers to help her mother. Faces appeared briefly, then disappeared. Doors closed. No one came. The rain soaked her clothes. The mud swallowed her feet. And in her desperation, the world showed her another kind of cruelty. Shadows moved. Two men walked out of the darkness. Voices laughed. Fear froze her body. Their intentions was to take advantage of her in turns until they are satisfied. Just before darkness could take everything from her, an older woman pulled her away, holding her tightly and screaming until the shadows disappeared. Kayima survived that night, but something inside her never fully recovered. Trauma does not always leave marks you can see. Sometimes it becomes part of how you breathe. After Mama Zuri's burial, Kayima's life became unbearable. The little protection she had was gone. Insults became louder, punishments harsher. Love vanished completely. She worked longer hours, slept less, and learned to disappear inside herself. Far from Kayima's suffering, in a world of light and privilege, lived a young man named Adrian Cole. He had grown up with comfort, education, and kindness. He believed people were mostly good because his life had given him no reason to believe otherwise. He was not cruel, but he was sheltered, and shelter can blind even the gentlest hearts. Larissa noticed Adrian the first time he visited their town for a charity event. She noticed the way people listened to him, the respect he carried without demanding it. She wanted him, not for love, but for victory. Taking him would prove her power. Losing him to someone like Kayima was unthinkable. She planned carefully. She invited Adrian into moments filled with laughter, drinks, and false warmth. She fed him stories, small lies first, then bigger ones. On a night clouded by alcohol and confusion, she arranged things so that Kayima would be sent into a room she did not belong in under the excuse of work, of obedience, of fear. What happened that night was not love. It was manipulation. Silence, a stolen moment built on deception. Kayima did not understand what was happening until it was already too late, and by then fear had taken her voice. She screamed for help and begged, but Adrian was too drugged to notice what he was doing. Larissa watched the aftermath with satisfaction. Months later, Kayima's body began to change. At first, she thought sickness had finally caught her too. She walked through nausea, through dizziness, through pain. When her pregnancy became impossible to hide, the house erupted with cruelty. Sarah mocked her openly. Darius cursed the day she was born. Larissa smiled, calm and victorious, already spreading lies. Gathering every remaining piece of courage, Kayima went to Adrian's house. Kayima stood outside Adrian's apartment for a long time before knocking. Her hands trembled, not from the cold, but from fear. She had practiced her words again and again in her mind, yet none of them felt strong enough to carry the truth she was about to speak. When the door finally opened and Adrian appeared, clean, confident, untouched by struggle, Kayima felt smaller than she ever had before. She lowered her eyes. "I need to talk to you," she said softly. Adrian hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but stepped aside. Inside, the room smelled of comfort. Polished furniture, quiet music, a life far removed from hers. Kayima stood awkwardly, holding her hands together as if afraid they might betray her shaking.
I wouldn't come here if it wasn't important.
Adrian sighed.
Larissa already told me you've been disturbing her. What is this about?
Kayima swallowed hard. Slowly, carefully, she placed her hand on her stomach.
I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air. Adrienne frowned. Tears welled up in her eyes.
It's yours.
For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Adrienne laughed. Short, disbelieving, almost offended.
That's not possible. You must be confused.
Kayima shook her head desperately. I'm not. I remember that night. I didn't understand everything that was happening, but I know it was you. I swear on my mother's grave, I would never lie about this. Her knees weakened and she nearly knelt in front of him. Please, she begged. I have nothing, no one. I'm not asking for luxury. I just want you to know the truth. Her tears fell freely now. She spoke quickly, afraid he would stop listening. I didn't come to trap you. I didn't plan this. I was scared. I still am. But this child, this life deserves a father who knows.
Before Adrienne could respond, the door behind them opened. Larissa stepped in. She took in the scene at once. Kayima's tears, her hand on her stomach, Adrienne's confusion, and smiled faintly as if everything was unfolding exactly as
What
planned.
is going on here?
She asked sweetly. Kayima turned toward her instinctively. Larissa,
Just let
please.
me explain.
Larissa laughed softly and walked toward Adrienne, placing a gentle hand on his arm.
Adrienne, you do not need to listen to this.
She said
She has
calmly.
done this before.
Kayima's eyes widened.
It is not true.
Larissa turned to her sharply.
Stop pretending.
She said coldly.
You know how you survive using your face, using men.
She looked back at Adrienne, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret.
She's desperate. Girls like her get pregnant all the time and look for someone wealthy to blame. She thinks you're weak enough to fall for it.
Kayima stepped forward.
That is a lie. I would never.
Larissa cut her off and grabbed her arm firmly.
You have said enough.
She
You are
snapped.
embarrassing yourself.
She dragged Kayima toward the door despite her resistance. Adrienne, Larissa added without turning back.
You deserve better than this kind of mess.
Kayima struggled, tears streaming down her face. Please, she cried out one last time. Just remember me. Remember that night, please. But the door was already closing. Adrienne stood frozen, shame and confusion twisting inside him, while Larissa gently pulled him away from the door, whispering words that would poison his thoughts for months to come. Outside, Kayima collapsed against the wall, clutching her stomach, realizing with crushing clarity that the pregnancy was not just meant to destroy her. It was meant to make Adrienne ashamed of ever believing she could be worthy of him. Not long after, she was thrown out of the house by her stepmother with the help of her father and Larissa. Her clothes landed in the dirt beside her. The door closed, no one looked back. She slept under roofs that were not hers, worked small jobs when her body allowed, and sometimes went days without food. Her pregnancy was painful. She fainted often. Fear lived in her chest. She spoke to her unborn children at night, promising them a life she could not yet imagine. One day, as Kayima went out to look for her daily bread, she passed out from stress and hunger. She was rushed to a small clinic by a good passerby and was admitted immediately due to some complications. Mercy finally found her in a small clinic where kindness still existed. Nurses who did not ask questions, a bed that did not judge, a doctor who noticed old bruises, deep fear, and quiet strength. Slowly, truth found its way to Adrienne. A careless argument from Larissa, contradictions, a test he could no longer avoid, guilt sharpened into certainty. When the truth finally stood before him, it crushed him. He had believed lies. He had rejected innocence. He had destroyed someone already broken. He searched desperately. The night Kayima went into labor, pain nearly took her life. Darkness closed in, but Adrian arrived, soaked in rain and regret, holding her hand as life broke into the world. 2 cries filled the room. Twins, a boy, a girl. Tears streamed down Adrian's face, not just for becoming a father, but for almost losing everything that mattered. Time passed. One evening, long after the babies were born, a familiar figure appeared at Kayima's door. Her father stood there, thinner, older, hollowed by regret. He fell to his knees before she could speak. "I failed you," he said, his voice breaking. "I failed your mother. I failed as a man." Kayima listened in silence. Forgiveness did not come easily, but pain had taught her wisdom, not bitterness. She did not forget, but she allowed healing to begin. Months later, Kayima stood on a cliff overlooking the endless sea. The wind moved her dress gently as her children slept in her arms. Adrian stood behind her, not claiming ownership, not making promises lightly, but standing present, changed. For the first time in her life, Kayima felt something unfamiliar. Safety. Her pain had not been the end of her story. It had been the beginning. And destiny, after waiting so long, finally spoke.